Since our readings are clearly about prayer, as I began to reflect on prayer in my own life, I went back to the beginnings of my introduction to prayer. And as a young child, prayer in our family was just as important as brushing your teeth. And along with that age of introduction, people would often say, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And of course, the answer was always a part of the experience when you looked at the people in your life who inspired you. And most of the time, the answer would start out with, "I think I'm going to be a priest." Or for young women, "I think maybe I'll be a sister." And then it went into teaching, firemen, policemen. The only description I never heard anyone of that age say was, "I want to be a politician." So we began to practice who we thought we wanted to be and our life of prayer. We did it at home. We came to church and we joined the larger community. And that was part and parcel of what growing up in my house was all about. Later on, I began to take and ask a different question of myself. And that question is, what do I want out of life? While trying to answer that question, I found that as I looked at it over time, I was able to gain a different insight and a deeper understanding of myself. Things that I once believed to be essential and absolutely necessary, I couldn't live without, they changed over time. They didn't last. And each time one of them changed, a new one appeared, a new question, a new challenge. So as I began to think, what do I want out of life? It's not stuff. It's got to be deeper than that. And so I began to ask the question, what if happiness was what I was really looking for? Happiness was my goal. Then how would I go about achieving that goal? Well, the starting point for me is grounded in that understanding. Happiness is an inside job. No one is responsible for my happiness. And sometimes that's a difficult lesson because we automatically think, well, my parents are responsible, my siblings are responsible, my children are responsible, and no one but yourself is responsible for your happiness. Along with that understanding comes the knowledge through experience that if I want to get something out of life, if I want to experience that happiness, then that is in direct proportion to what I give back into life, what I do in my relationships. Now, in the gospel, Jesus takes this perspective and he gives the answer his disciples request on how they are to pray. And he starts by telling them that God and his will is the top priority. Hallowed be your name. That's the starting point. When we understand, we honor and reverence the holy name of God, then we can continue on that journey. Because then we can ask for what we need. And as we go through the prayer, what do we ask for? Our daily bread. We ask for forgiveness. We ask for deliverance. take what we ask for and what we learn and look at this gathering that calls us together this evening, a gathering of prayer, a gathering of worship, where we come standing in the presence of God, being instructed through His Word, being invited to come to the table to be nourished. And what we begin to understand is that the presence of God's kingdom takes shape in the midst of the community. So this evening, the presence of God's kingdom is here for us with God in our midst. Now, with this kind of prayer, Jesus prepares us, as He did His disciples, to continue on the ministry of salvation. And He asks us, take the initiative to ask, to seek, and to knock for what we need to fulfill this task. The responsibility is ours. Now, one way to check the reality of how that's happening is by continual reflection and time in prayer, so that we can look at the process of our ongoing conversion, the change of heart. In order to do this, I'd like to suggest to you 2 questions for you to ponder. The first, how honest am I with God and myself in prayer? How honest am I with God and myself in prayer? And the second question, does persistence in prayer initiate spiritual growth and a change of heart? Taking time and reflection to think about and answer these questions will show us who we really are and will encourage us to make God that priority and the building of His kingdom.